Come on, people. We are back for the sequel of St. Supéry, live from Napa Valley here at the glorious Toot Suite live broadcast headquarters. I already said it. We are in Napa Valley. It is a gorgeous, beautiful Saturday morning turning into afternoon here in Napa Valley. And this is what it's all about. We are back for a second installment of talking to the great Michael Scholz, winemaker from St. Supéry. Hello, sir. Good to see you again.
Alan, how are you today?
I am outstanding.
Fantastic.
And I'm getting better. I'm excited to taste through these wines with you once more. I'd like to say hello to a couple of the accounts out there in the world joining us. We have Twins Marketplace in Austin and San Antonio. We have Burns Fine Wines in Tampa, the legendary Burns in Tampa. Spirits of Carmine in Manhattan, and Firebird's Wood-Fired Grill. We have a ton of folks joining us from around the country today. Highly, highly, highly encourage you to participate in the conversation. Throw out some questions on Twitter. You see the information on your screen there, at St. Supéry on Twitter, hashtag St. Supéry, or just use the chat functions right inside Toot Suite. Ask us anything. It's such a great opportunity to interact live, and we're excited to hear your thoughts. So before we get into these wines today, I got a question for you.
Sure. What's
How'd
that?
you get into this industry? How did you end up doing what you do? What was your journey to get you to what you're doing right now in St. Supéry today?
Well, listen, I had a pretty fortunate upbringing. I grew up on a very old family vineyard in the Barossa Valley in Australia, of course. And I had the opportunity to spend my days running around the vineyards, running around the vines and so forth. And if I needed to go and earn pocket money, I'd be out in the fields, pounding in posts or pruning vines or doing whatever opportunity there was to earn a dollar here and there. So that's what I did. And, you know, it was a fabulous old place. It was actually set, I'm sixth generation on that property. So it's been my family forever. My family actually are the original settlers on that place. It's pretty cool. So that sort of got me involved in grape growing and winemaking. My dad was a doctor, but all his buddies were winemakers, or somehow involved in grape growing or what have you. So he was a grape grower as well, of course. So I was always around those guys, and went through school, and then at the end of school, what am I going to do? Seemed to be a fair natural transition, and it seems to have worked out pretty well at this point anyway.
Outstanding.
So yeah, that's how I got here.
And if you could go back in time to when you were, going to college and whatnot, what piece of advice would you give yourself as a budding, aspiring wine professional?
I just think that at sort of early in the day in the industry, be very open-minded and pay attention to those guys, those winemakers, or those grape growers that you admire and respect, because they're pretty bright. They've got a lot of experience, and they can unload a lot of information that will be an advantage to you in this business as a winemaker.
I couldn't agree more, and it's very fitting, because I think that's really what we're doing here today, and continuing that trend and sharing your information with the world. So we're going to taste 4 wines today, just to give our viewers an idea of what they are. We have the 2012 Napa Valley Estate Sauvignon Blanc, the 2010 Rutherford Estate Vineyard Merlot, the 2009 Napa Valley Estate Cabernet Sauvignon, and the 2012 Napa Valley Estate Moscato. So before we taste the first wine here, can you talk a little bit about St. Supéry, the story, the family behind it? Give us the rundown.
Sure. Well, St. Supéry is a fabulous property, and we're right on Highway 29, right in the heart of the Napa Valley, right here in Rutherford. And if you ever have an opportunity to come and visit us, or you have, we have a terrific location and site. And we have 2 different properties. That location where the cellar is, in Rutherford. We have a second property further north on the east side of the valley, and that's called the Dollarhide Ranch. They're our 2 estate vineyards. We are a family-owned property, and we are a estate. So what that means is the Scholz family who own us have invested in Napa a long time ago. They've owned us ever since. They love St. Supéry. They're enthused about it, and they love to make great wine, and that's what they're about. We have these 2 tremendous estates. We produce all of our wines from it, and when you come along to our new visitor centre, all the wines you get to see are from grapes grown in those 2 places, and that's essentially what we are. And we're a sustainably farmed property. We sort of try to be good stewards to the earth, good farmers and good grape growers, and of course, great winemakers. That's the goal.
Outstanding. And you guys have a new designation on your label in terms of sustainability, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so we're certified Napa Green, which is very cool, a really cool, fantastic thing. What Napa Green means is that we are trying to be good steward of land. So, for example, we are in our Dollarhide Ranch. It's an amazing place. It's 1,500 acres of dirt, basically, and of that, we have 500 acres planted to vineyard. And therefore, we have a lot of sort of corridors, wildlife corridors. We have some enormous lakes. We have actually 7 lakes in the place. And therefore, we have an enormous amount of bird life. And there's a lot of migration through this property because of those water holes and what have you. So it's a very cool place. Always trying to be earth-friendly. We don't bring on synthetics into the property. We keep things as natural as possible and try to grow fabulous fruit.
Outstanding. And speaking of Dollarhide, we got this Sauvignon Blanc right here.
Absolutely.
I want to dig into this thing today because this is one of my favorite wines, period. This is one of my staples at home, what I drink. It's $20 a bottle, one of the best values, I think, in Napa Valley. It's all estate fruit. It's coming from Dollarhide. Talk us through this wine a little bit.
Sure. Well, you know, this Sauvignon Blanc, it's a wine that I love. It's a style that I love. It's really, really cool. It is all grown on the Dollarhide Ranch. All of our Sauvignon Blancs on that property. And we have a number of different soils out there. And those different soils provide wines with different attributes, flavour attributes and what have you. Some are really intense with grapefruit qualities. Some have more mineral approaches. Some have a bit more of that sort of zesty lime approach and what have you. So we have the opportunity, or I do as a winemaker, to make those wines and then later on assemble them into the blend. But every year, our Sauvignon Blanc comes from the Dollarhide Ranch, comes from the same plants, the same location. So we have a real consistency about what we're doing and to produce this wine. So year by year, it's a pretty consistent sort of animal, this one.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to go up to Dollarhide. It's so unique. It's so kind of set off into its own place. Yeah. It feels like its own little world. And there is a ton of water on the property. How does that water play maybe a moderating factor? How does the water presence affect the vineyards and the Sauvignon Blanc? Well, you do get a tempering effect of temperature close to the lake. Yeah. So, and of course, the lakes are low. Yeah. So those vineyards that are low will have a slight effect. It's not dramatic because it's not the same as coastal. Okay. When I say that, we are coastal, but we're not the same as being by the ocean. Mm-hmm. So the immediate vineyards will have a bit of a tempering effect. But, you know, water's a pretty important part of growing grapes. Mm-hmm. We don't want to over-irrigate or do anything, but, you know, when we get warm temperatures, and in Napa we do, in the summer, we need a little water to help those vines along, like any plant. Mm-hmm. So that's one issue. You also have, you know, other issues that you need water for, but a lot of it's just natural water anyway. That's going to be there irregardless whether we're there or not. Yeah. Mm. And I've also had the opportunity to come by the winery when you do these comparative tastings where you'll get like 9 Sauvignon Blancs, even just from Napa Valley. And it's amazing to me how much diversity there are in the wine. Can you talk a little bit about that diversity and how this one distinguishes itself?
Yeah. There's a bunch of different styles you can choose from with Sauvignon Blanc. Mm-hmm. And in Napa, like you mentioned here, Alan, you do get them all from various winemakers in the valley. Mm-hmm. The style we do, and you know, I had the good fortune of bringing this style forward at St. Supéry way back in 1996, and that is we do a tank fermented style. Mm-hmm. So it's a wine that we are not trying to incorporate oak into or encumber the wine with oak. Mm-hmm. There's other winemakers that do, and it's a great thing. It's a different style and different approach, but that's not what we do. We're about having a glass of wine that presents Sauvignon Blanc, the variety, and what the strengths of that variety are, and really what the fruit is and within that expression. Mm-hmm. And you'll see in this glass, I mean, you check out the aromatics. You're going to see that it's just full of that. It's full of that grapefruit, that green lime, a bit of a citrus approach and what have you. Really opulent and really lifted. And by tank fermenting, that's what we're trying to capture. Mm-hmm. That's what is grown on the vine in the vineyard. We're trying to get that from there to the tank, to the bottle, to the glass. Mm-hmm. Now, if we incorporate oak, the wine would change its style. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with it, it's just different. So that's what we choose, and that's the style we do, we approach. And part of the reason we do that is because we have some fabulous plant material.
Yeah.
Our vineyards are really cool. Our Sauvignon Blancs are cool. And over the years, we've found some of the old vines we have out there, and some of our vines are like 25 plus years of age, which is kind of interesting.
Wow.
And what we've done is those vineyards are in a really cool, sort of dark, loamy soil, and they produce a fruit that's really intense in that grapefruit and that green lime approach, but tremendous volume of flavour. So way back in the 90s, I actually went through that vineyard and selected vines by grape flavour that had the most intense flavour. And whenever we've had to develop a new vineyard out there, we've taken a selection from those vines and developed a vineyard. So we actually have now at St. Supéry, Dollarhope, a big part of our acreage now is from our own selection of Sauvignon Blanc. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And you must really know how those vines work and how to get the characteristics that you're seeking.
Yeah, exactly. What we've done is we've encouraged that consistency. So we know, we're starting to be very aware of what to anticipate. Yeah.
And then can you talk a little bit about pairing with this wine? Such a food-friendly wine.
Yeah, listen, we talked about that the other day. There's a lot of things to do with Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc, the dish I said the other day, which I think is a great one, is sea bass with a butter caper sauce and what have you. I think it's a great pair with this wine. The other thing is, again, salads with a light vinaigrette. I think you can handle that because it's a crisp wine. So it's got a little acid, and when you have that vinaigrette, you can pair with it pretty well. So they're great, but seafood, shellfish, that type of thing often work very well with Sauvignon Blanc. Or just have a glass of Sauvignon Blanc.
There you go. Pair it with itself. Yeah, pair it with another glass, right?
Exactly.
You know what I love about this wine is it's so fruit forward. It has that grapefruit. It has the lime, the citrus, all the things that we talked about. And it also has that kind of herbaceous backbone to it. So if that's something that you like in a Sauvignon Blanc, you're going to find it. If it's something that you don't like in a Sauvignon Blanc, it's not present enough to get in the way.
Correct.
You know, I'm not a big New Zealand guy. I gravitate more towards the French or the Napa style of Sauvignon Blanc. But it's still there in a very balanced way.
Yeah, there's a hint of that in the background. And what my goal is in the vineyard at harvest time is to push the ripeness so we get to this flavour profile. But I want to push that a little further beyond the greener profile or that bell pepper profile that some people will see and what have you. But I don't mind having a hint of that caper in the background. So, as long as it's subtle and sort of buried as a deep layer, I think it's interesting. But I certainly don't want it to be overbearing.
And we don't have a bottle here to taste, but could you quickly just touch on the Bordeaux style interpretation of Sauvignon Blanc that you do?
The one that we do? Sure. So what we do is we do a wine called a Vertu, which means virtuous. And it's a fantastic wine. And from my perspective, it is an exciting wine to make because what we do here is we look for, we make some Semillon on our property, which of course is one of the Bordeaux whites, and we make all of our Sauvignon Blanc, and then we put together a blend. But that's a different approach in type and style. We vary that wine a little bit from probably the classic Bordeaux because most of those guys are making the blends probably with 10 or 15% of Semillon, more often than not. We actually typically are about 50% to 60% of our blend being Semillon. We also incorporate a lot of barrel fermentation in this wine. And about 70% of the Vertu blend is barrel fermented and 10% in tank. The tank is, of course, Sauvignon Blanc. And the barrel is a bit of Sauvignon and mainly Semillon. There's some barrels are old, some barrels are new, so we incorporate with intent some more of that oak profile. So we're bringing a little of that sort of real seductive toasty quality, that slight vanilla approach, to be a complement to that wine and to encourage those flavours. So it's a pretty unique wine, and it's sort of our spin on our white Bordeaux.
Gotcha. Yeah. Awesome. Do we have any questions? We do have questions. People are calling 2012 a perfect vintage in Napa. Do you agree? And if so, what made it perfect?
Good question. It was a great vintage. 2012 was fantastic. And we'd like 2012 to be the follow-on to 2013, 2014, 2015. If we could have them like that, that would be wonderful. But that's not what happens in the world of farming. Every year is a unique individual situation. 2012 was excellent. Why was it excellent? We had a fairly dry winter. It often leads to lower groundwater reserves, which We don't want those too low, but if it's to avoid excessive water in the ground, allows us to grow better red wines, particularly, and better fruit profile and flavours. The season was not extremely hot, was hot, but it was warm. So we had good ripening approach through the summer. And we had a couple of warm days and what have you, but it wasn't a lot of extremes. And it continued, started in June basically, and continued through July, through August, and September was nice. And then October started pretty warm, actually, surprisingly. So it was just a nice, even ripening year. We had plenty of time on the vine with the fruit. And to get correct flavour and for reds to get correct tannin maturity, you kind of need time on the vine to allow that to happen, because in California, achieving sugar is not that difficult, but achieving the ripeness of your flavours and your tannins is more of a challenge. So that's what we're trying. That's what 212 allowed it to happen so easily and so evenly. And it was very, very nice.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
So I should mention that Grappos, grappos.com, is an outstanding tool that you can use to find the wines in distribution that we're tasting right now. So be sure to check that out. And I should also mention that this Sauvignon Blanc is going to be the easiest St. Supéry wine to find. It has the most distribution. And I'd actually like to pose a question to our friends in the trade at the restaurants that are watching this and ask you, how do you guys use the Sauvignon Blanc? Are there any go-to pairings that you guys use? What's your experience with it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Moving on to the next wine, the 2010 Rutherford Estate Vineyard Merlot. Now, I got to say right out of the gate, we tried this a couple of days ago. This blew everyone's mind.
It's a cool wine.
I got
really cool wine.
3 or 4 comments about this after Toot Sweet, just about how great this wine is. What do we got going on here?
Listen, it's time to give Merlots just desserts. Well,
yes.
And we in Napa, we are typically Bordeaux winemakers. And remember, Bordeaux and Napa typically talks Cabernet Sauvignon, and we grow great Cabernet Sauvignon in Napa Valley. A lot of people do. But listen, Merlot is a great wine in your Bordeaux blends. And we, therefore, over the years, have planted the other Bordeaux blenders. Merlot is one of them. We've done a little Malbec, a little Petit Verdot. And so on the Rutherford Estate, we have a Merlot that's really coming into its maturity and a good place. It's a wine that has, or a vineyard that's had new vineyard design, new planting selection and what have you, and we're just achieving this phenomenal structure, phenomenal fruit and what have you in the wine. And so it's been a great surprise to us. And that wine presented itself, and we've made that wine as a Merlot, and this one here is 100%. It's all Merlot. Doesn't have any Cabernet to build its structure. It does it all on its own, and it's just a fabulous vineyard. Great place, making a fabulous wine.
And in terms of Merlot in Rutherford, what does Rutherford offer as a place for growing Merlot?
Well, I think it's quite a good location because we get all those weather influences off the San Pablo Bay down in San Francisco. So as Napa is so famous for, we get all the fog in the summer rolling up through the valley, makes those nights much colder. And then as the morning warms up, it peels back and rolls down the valley. Well, Rutherford is right in the middle there. So we don't get the extreme fog and chills in the morning, but we get enough cooling effects. And I think Merlot likes a little bit of that. It needs sunshine too, so we can't have it for too much of the day. But I think we have a nice balance, and we seem to achieve it. And why is that? I don't know, but sort of the proof is in the glass a little bit. It just seems to work very well for us.
And when you smell this, what jumps out at you in terms of characteristics?
Well, number one, it's a really opulent wine. It's quite bright, quite ripe, quite opulent. And I think the aromatics that typically jump are that blackberry, that black plum. You've got a little bit of that mocha in the background, which probably is encouraged by the oak selection, the oak maturation, and what have you. So I think they're all encompassing in the aromas. Again, on the palate, quite opulent. It's got great density for a Merlot, and great structure and tannin, yet it's somewhat supple. So it has a sense of charm about its feel, about its texture through the mouthfeel. And the flavours again are that blackberry, black plum. But there's just a tiny thread of raspberry in the wine. There's that mocha from that slightly toasted vanilla and oak barrels we've used, all encouraging the wine. It's pretty cool. It's a nice Merlot.
This wine is silly good. This I just lose my mind over this. It's got that kind of old world graphite to it, a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Old world
it does have a bit of that graphite.
It's got complexity. It's elegant. It's got acidity. So many layers to it. The red fruit, the raspberries that you touch on, I definitely get that. It's just so alive. This would be a mean wine to include in like a Somm blind tasting just to mess with people. Like, I think it would throw a lot of people off because it goes so many different directions in a really cool way.
Yeah. No, it is really nice wine. I've been quite thrilled with this vineyard and what it's doing. It's become very consistent year to year in the Merlot it's been producing. And 2010 was a good season for it.
And as I understand it, you guys have some new technology that you're incorporating in the winery that has been brought on in recent years. Yeah.
A few years ago, we actually built a whole new cellar within our winery. So it's sort of like the cellar within the cellar. And it's really unique. From my perspective, it's fantastic. I love it. It's like
I love it when winemakers talk about their new toys. It's
absolutely. It's like another box of bag of tricks and box of tools and what have you.
Yes.
So we built this new cellar with these new little tanks. They're open top fermenters. They're small batch fermenters, allowing us to separate all of our vineyards as we bring them in and keep them as individual lots, so that we have more opportunity and what have you with blending down the track and so forth. But we also brought in a punch down tool so we can do a cap maceration like the guys would in the old world. It's sort of a copy from the old world, taking everything back to the roots of how we get the colour and extraction and structure in our wines. So it's back to sort of basically doing old-fashioned punch downs. A lot of that now, we incorporate it with some other technique as well, but it's excellent. We also, prior to the fruit ever hitting the fermenter, we now have a double sorting system, which is really fantastic, and it really has made a big impact on our structure and our tannin feel and profile. And what the sorting system does is it receives the fruit from the vineyard early in the morning because we harvest at night to keep the fruit cool. We put it across a belt that brings all the clusters in front of all of us, and we hand sort the clusters, which means any clusters that aren't fabulous get taken out. And then we remove the stems and then drop the berries onto a vibrating table. This table vibrates and oscillates in a fashion so it moves the berries down the table and spreads them into a single layer. So it allows us to take out and see any piece of green leaf, twig, stem, whatever, so it doesn't get to the fermenter. And on top of that, we can even see green berries. That's berries that may not have colour as well as others. So you take those out. By the time you finish, you've got this bin of fruit that looks like a sort of a package of supermarket blueberries. It's really pretty impressive. And therefore, what we're sending to the tank has great purity of berry and colour and what have you. So it's pretty unique, pretty fantastic.
Outstanding. Very exciting to hear about the developments. And do we have any more questions? We do. Look at this. Question from @Jessica Wines. Has 2013 frost been an issue thus far?
Not for us yet.
Okay.
You know, we have had a lot of dry conditions recently. Now, when you have a dry winter, it can exacerbate your frost pressures as you commence bud break. So we have a season that's setting us up to be potentially a difficult frost season, but bud break is only just starting. So therefore, until we get bud break, we don't really panic about it too much. But we are aware there's a possibility.
Always ready.
Yeah.
Love it. Any more questions about moving on? We are going to move on to our, I should mention that the Merlot that we just tasted is in very limited distribution. It's typically only available to Wine Club members, though you can find it at select restaurants and retailers throughout the country. Again, go back to graphos.com, and I see that we have inspired another question to come through from @Ryan Schenk. How do you like the optical sorter?
Well, that's a whole different game there, because that's brand spanking new technology that we just started to look at this last season and the harvest 2012. So we, all of the sorting I just mentioned regarding the Merlot here is all hand sorted. So it's very much a manual approach and system, and we operate at very, very slow speeds to achieve that result. Well, there's technology now where you can do it through an optical system, which is moves a little more quickly, and it's pretty unique. What it does is you do everything we talked about, and that is get everything down to a berry stage, so the berries are off the stem, and then you put it through this belt that runs it across an optical camera. So the camera is hooked up to a computer screen, and you can actually tell it what you like and what you don't like, and it will actually eliminate bits of green leaf, twig, what have you. And you have a number of options there. It's very, very cool. It's early days for us looking at this, but we did a trial on it this year, and we were so impressed. We pretty much did everything that we couldn't put through our hand system, we put through the optical, almost all of our fruit. And at the moment, I'm very encouraged by it.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's exciting
cool
stuff.
It really is. That's pretty
crazy.
That is exciting.
Another question at Kelly Gilday, food pairing with Merlot.
Food pairing with Merlot. You know what? I don't know. I'm a winemaker, but I do like to eat. And I think at home we eat a bunch of stuff. We're into seafood, red meats, what have you. I'm Australian, of course. Rosemary lamb, chop, that type of thing. Rack of lamb, that type of thing would work very, very well with this. In tiny little hole, and I like with that, those little potatoes you get that are rolled in duck fat before they're cooked. They're fantastic.
That works, huh?
That's absolutely. It's brilliant. I wouldn't say it was good for you, but it tastes fantastic.
Don't mess with simplicity. I love it.
Exactly.
So, a third wine, 2009 Napa Valley Estate Cabernet Sauvignon. This is the flagship Cabernet Sauvignon of St. Supéry. What do we got going on here?
It is an important wine to us. There's no doubt. Just like we talked about the Sauvignon Blanc being the wine we see out in the world more often than not. This Cabernet is the wine we see out in the world more often than not also. Wine that we take great pride in, and we're very serious about this wine. It's a combination of Cabernet from both of our estates, and the wine spends about, just under 2 years in barrel, and we select some really nice barrels for it. Typically about 40% of these barrels are new, which is quite a reasonable amount. It allows there to be some good oak integration to help structure and encourage, the fruit flavors and profiles of the wine. So it's a pretty cool wine.
Do we know when this wine was opened? Like how early before anybody on the outside? How early before? Because it's tasting different. It's a little bit more open than last time. And I noticed it on the Merlot too. It's got a little bit more of a floral quality, a little bit more of a jammy quality, dark fruit. It was the same kind of notes that we were getting before, and we had talked about, decant this thing for an hour and it'll come to life, and I'm getting that this time around, comparing it to last time.
I think what you're saying here is you're saying and Cabernet Sauvignon will do that. It's kind of, all wine is like a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
And so you put any wines in a glass, they will change with time. And Cabernet is quite unique for that. Mm-hmm. It'll do that, particularly when you're big and we have big, dense sort of structure. And this wine's a pretty significant wine.
Yeah.
It's got good structure. It has that deep blackberry sort of fruit, that blackberry, that cassis or currant sort of quality to the aromatics, that dark espresso, that dark chocolate. And as you leave that wine to be exposed to air, it'll become more opulent with time.
Yeah.
And I think you see that a little here.
That black and blue fruit's just shining through, and it's just coming to life in a beautiful way. Now, all of your fruit is estate, which means you get 100% control over the fruit, the grapes you bring in to make the wine. Can you talk about having that control and your approach creatively?
Well, yeah. Estate is a really unique thing, and we're very fortunate at St. Supéry to have an enormous amount of estate vineyard. We're not a very big wine company, but as an estate grape grower, we are significant. We have some very cool properties. And you look at all those old world places that have been famous for a long time, say the Bordelais houses, even the Burgundian houses, all those guys. They're these little clos or estates or farms that they make wine from their little place every year. They become very consistent because it comes from the same place and very renowned for being consistently good. Mm-hmm. Well, we believe there's beauty in a state because of that. And we think that having your own vineyards and being consistent from year to year, that means all the wines we make come from the same grapes, the same plants every year. that there's some real magic to that. From the point of view of management, as you asked here, Alan, by owning our own vineyards, it also allows us to make our decisions on what we need to do in the field to grow a great bunch of grapes, or really to make a great glass of wine, because that's essentially our goal when we grow some grapes. We're trying to make a great glass of wine, and therefore, if we see a need to drop fruit on the ground off the vine, and that sounds like a crazy concept, but the reality is we like to have a fairly even display of fruit in the vine. Some years we're blessed with more fruit, some years with less. And when we get more fruit, we'll often cut some of that off so that we have the same density of flavour produced every year, the same structure every year, and what have you. So we have the option as a vineyard owner to make those decisions. Mm-hmm. And those decisions for us are based on the quality we would like to see in the glass. Mm-hmm. And we are quality driven. We want to make a great glass of wine.
And you're also pretty invested in biodiversity within the estate, in terms of growing some other things as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
Essentially, as mentioned, we're a certified Napa Green vineyard, and what that does is recognise the fact that we at St. Supéry are working hard to be good stewards of the land. We are working hard to maintain as natural an environment as possible, and having the least impact as possible during our farming practices. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to achieve that. And essentially, so we're sustainable, basically, is what we are. We're a sustainable farmer. And that's our goal. Mm-hmm. We want to do a great job with our fruit, but our goal is to be good stewards while we do it.
And up at Galahad, don't you have like a bunch of peach trees and apple trees? I mean, I know a guy that knows a guy, and I have a little bit of St. Supéry apple butter at home, and it's pretty special stuff.
We got a fabulous couple of guys. Josh Anstey runs the vineyards. He looks after that, along with Jeff. They do a fabulous job out there. And they have encouraged biodiversity in a number of fashions. So they've planted peaches, pluots, everything you could imagine in the way of fruits. They've got like 1,000 trees up there. I don't know when they're growing the grapes, or growing the trees, or what they're, but they got that. Josh has got a bunch of beehives, so he's got bees flying around the place, and he's producing honey. He's got some olive trees. He's producing olives.
And that keeps the bugs
oil,
happy, right?
Absolutely.
Which keeps the whole predator cycle and everything.
Exactly. So the whole concept of biodiversity is to have one type of agriculture benefiting another type of agriculture. So the guys are trying to understand that, and they've studied this, and they're trying to do a better job all the time. Mm-hmm. And all of this stuff is all sort of encouraging to each other across the game.
Definitely. And I see we have more questions rolling in. Please be patient as the excitement builds here. From Tom Maher, I hope I got that right. How long can we keep the 2009 cab in the cellar?
Yeah, it's hard to put the number on a glass of wine, I think. So I always like to be a little conservative. This Cabernet Sauvignon, it's a really cool wine. It's very structured and has good ageability. I'm going to guess it's got, I just don't know. I mean, it's got probably 12 good years in it. It may have 15 or 18, it may even be beyond. But I'd say if you leave it for 8 to 12 years, at 8 to 12 years, you'll have a very interesting wine to drink.
I have a process. I have a method guaranteed to get that right. You ready for this?
I do want to know that because I've been searching for this for a while. So, Alan, I'm enthralled.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to drop some knowledge here. You buy 2 cases of this wine, and you drink 1 bottle a year until it's no longer fresh and vibrant. It might take 20 years or so, and that's how you guarantee you'll hit just that sweet spot, just right.
That's a great idea. Therefore, we have to have a... That's fantastic. I love that. I just need I need a big space to store all the 2 cases I'm going to have.
It's a great problem to have, right?
Yeah,
we need a bigger cellar.
Yeah.
Yes. So you don't mess with simplicity. More questions, yes. And the 2007 cab, what are we thinking in terms of longevity? And this is great because we do have some trade partners with us, and some of those folks might have some back vintages. What are you seeing as these wines develop in the bottle and the cellar?
Yeah. Well, I think, when I talk about age, I mean, you look at how do you want to drink the wine. In this day and age, a lot of us do drink wines young. That's what makes this whole thing a little more complicated. The 2009 probably will have a longer life than the 2007 because it's a little more structured. It has a little more tannin, a little more feel, and will probably lean to being handling age a little better in the long run. The 07 was a vintage where the wines were real pretty, real elegant. They have nice structure, lovely approach, fantastic. Not quite as big in its tannin and what have you. So, I probably pegged the 2007 for its life a couple of years back off the 2009. So it'll have it's going to drink well at 8 to 12 years also, but it may not have the 18-year life that this wine possibly could have.
And then in terms of the 2009 cab, when does it hit the sweet spot for you? Generally speaking, in terms of your cabs in general, is it upon release? Is it maybe, about a year after? Yeah,
I tell you what, I like to see. I prefer to see the wine going to market in about 9 months after bottling. If I have a little more time, I encourage that. So 9, 12 months. I think the wines drink very well after that. So really, essentially, they're about a 3-year-old wine from the time of being a grape at that point. I think they drink quite well then. But if you really want the wine to round out and become a little more silky and really interesting from the bottle maturation time, I think the wine needs to be bottled for probably 3 years, and then it's really interesting till about 8 years out. And then at that point, you're starting looking at a slightly aged wine, and that's really a consumer preference. Do you want your wine young or do you want your wine older? Again, I beat around the bush. How long should you keep a wine? How do you want to drink the wine?
It's a great point. There isn't a right answer. So I guess it does really depend on what your palate is. And do you like your wines fruitier and fresher, or do you like them with a little bit more of that kind of earthy development inside the bottle? So
exactly.
Great point. Question. Talk about how you decide when to release.
Well, releases are interesting. We know our wines pretty well. We know that we want to have a barrel maturation time of about 2 years. And then at that point, we finalise our blend and we take that wine to barrel in the case of our reds. At that point, once it's in bottle, we leave it to rest. I would like that wine, like I said a moment ago, to be about 9 months in bottle. So I'm looking for release to be somewhere around that point. That's my target, because when the wine comes out at that point, it's really had time to rest and round in the bottle. The fruit flavours typically are really showing very well, and the palate feel typically is really, really good at that point. There is variation from year to year because every season, Mother Nature brings us a different season every year. So there's a little variation to that, but that's essentially what I look for. It's a fairly safe assumption that our reds will be drinking that well at that time. But that's just the start. There's a lot more future for those wines from there on.
I got to come back to this 09 cab again, because it's continuing to evolve in the glass. Now it's going more towards like a eucalyptus, minty, kind of cherry. I'm getting a lot more of kind of like a savory herb anise character. Beautiful.
Definitely see a lot of that anise, and we see that in our wines a bit actually. We like that. We tend to have good dark fruit Cabernet. You need to realise that a lot of this Cabernet in this blend is coming off of benchland to hillside sites. So those sites tend to provide good ripeness, good blackberry qualities, a lot of that espresso on our vineyards, and like you say, a little bit of that anise. And you'll see that a bit in our wines. It's quite, we're fairly consistent with that, again, because we come from the same vineyards all the time.
I just can't believe how much this is evolving in the glass. It's just beautiful. We have another question from Grace Hoffman. Welcome back. Glad to have you again. When blending, how long does it take to finalize a blend?
Oh, man. It can take a long time. That's a big process. Blending is something that I love doing as a winemaker. I think it's a fun part of the job. Many parts of the job are fun, but blending, you really starting to see how your wines are aging, how they're coming together. You're selecting those components that will go to your final wine you choose to assemble. So we'll actually start, we'll narrow down our blending through the life of the wine. So after we've finished the harvest, the wines will come off the skins and go direct to the barrel. The wines will be in barrel for about 4 to 6 months, and we'll pull them out and we'll do a little bit of early sub-blending. Not much. Most of our lots are kept separate. We'll do a little, then we'll leave the wine until it's about 1 year old or maybe 15 months old. And that's when we really pull things out and do our significant blending. And at that point, we have a lot of wines on the bench. I mean, we have all of our vineyards are set up in individual blocks. And when we make the wines in tank, we typically try to keep them separate. So we might have, and I have it right now because I'm working on blends right now on the 2011 Reds. I can't remember what I've got, but I think I probably have 50 to 70 wines on the bench. And so now we're trying to look through that and see what we're doing, see what's going to come together to make each wine we make. So that's what we're up to. So how long does it take? On a wine like this, the Cabernet Sauvignon probably takes longer than all the others. I might spend 1.5 to 2 weeks working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, quite a while.
Good question. And next question from Jessica Wines. What wines and regions inspire you when you're not drinking St. Supéry? What do you drink?
Well, I live in the Napa Valley. I spend my time in the Napa Valley, so I drink a lot of Napa wines, of course. Obviously, a lot of other brands that aren't St. Supéry. And I like to diversify things up, so I'll try other people's wines and other varieties out of interest because I got friends that make Pinot Noir and various things that I don't. I drink those a bit. But what inspires me is the wines I'm most interested in are our white Bordeaux, our Sauvignon Blanc-based wines for whites, Cabernet Sauvignon, and I grew up in the Barossa Valley, so I like Shiraz. So they're all the things I do. So I guess I'm inspired by those locations where we live right here, where I grew up, and I think it's great and interesting to taste those wines out of Bordeaux because that's what we are. We are a Bordeaux house, and I love Bordeaux Reds. I love the Bordeaux white blends, and I think they're really quite fantastic. And it's always cool to go back and look at what these guys, these winemakers have been doing for hundreds of years before I ever came about and see what that's evolved to today and take a bit of a lesson from that. So it's good to look at those. But yeah, listen, I like those things. I mean, those locations, I think Rhone's interesting. I think Bordeaux's really fantastic. Cool.
Those all work. They're very good regions indeed. Our last wine of today is always a fun one. It is the 2012 Napa Valley Estate Moscato. Now, Moscato has been going through a very fun trend lately. It's very popular. I know it's been a very popular wine for you guys. We've seen it appear in pop culture a lot, in hip hop culture, music videos, and it's just a wine that seems people gravitate towards it and it resonates with them. What do we have going on in the glass here in terms of making this wine?
Well, fun, fabulous wine. I mean, it locks both ends of this tasting in our style here because we started with a Sauvignon Blanc that was tank fermented. That has no oak influence at all. We now finish with the Moscato, and it's the same thing. We tank ferment this. We ferment it in stainless steel. We do not incorporate oak. We do not try to encumber it with that. And the goal is, Alan, to do the same thing. We're trying to capture the variety, the fruit of what is in those grapes and what we grow in the field. We're trying to get that from there to the glass. And you check this out. It's real bouncy and opulent. The flavours really jump out at you. And they're full of that sort of peach blossom, that white peach, that apricot. It's got a little bit of lychee in the background. You got a hint of those tropical notes of like mango. But exciting, it's really an exciting.
It's really good. It just tastes good.
Yeah, it is.
It's just tasty. It's yummy. It's not even just tasty. It's yummy. It's like eating a peach. It's just like you just want to drink more of it.
Yeah.
So
it's a really, really, really excellent wine. It is a sweet wine, of course, but it's not a late harvest wine, so it's not syrupy and thick like those Sauterne styles or what have you, which are great wines, but that's not what this is. It's more of a fun wine. It's light in its feet. We try to maintain good natural acidity. So while it's quite sweet, that natural acidity will help balance it and make it sort of vibrant and fun. Really keep it sort of happening and bouncing a bit.
Agreed. It is delicious. And we have a guest to join us today, the St. Supéry guest experiences manager, Scott Tracy, who's going to talk to us a little bit about how you enjoy this wine at home.
Well, happy Saturday.
Welcome back.
Yes. This is such a beautiful wine to enjoy. And there's a tendency, I think, for sometimes people to enjoy it such as a beverage that they don't realize its potential at the table. It has such a brightness to it, such a fresh quality. And if you normally drink red wines, you might think that, well, this is a little sweet, it's a dessert wine. But as Michael said, it's not a botrytis wine, it's not a port, it's not going to be a wine for chocolate. But it loves fruit, it loves the dishes we prepare in the summertime. And the American culture is a culture that sort of loves things that are a little sweet, if you think about sweet potatoes and things we have at holiday dinners. So it's this fruit that speaks, it's so magical with dishes. Because it has that little brightness, it ends up being very lively and gains texture with the right dish. And I think that's really the key. And so when we think about food, we've developed some menus that I think that are very exciting, and an appetizer through dessert to work with this Moscato. We were talking the other day about a little amuse-bouche, which would be a Hawaiian-inspired ahi tuna poke with pineapple, a little macadamia nut, and some ponzu and ginger. So you have some spices and some fruit that really brings life to this wine. The other day we made a appetizer. There was a strawberry panzanella salad, and so it was fresh strawberries tossed with toasted bread with some aged Gouda cheese and some orange zest, and just a little spritz of balsamic vinegar to give it a little bit of a sparkle, so it wasn't overly fruity and sweet, but fruity in terms of expressive, and have these other flavors highlight the complexity and the beauty of the wine. I think that people who simply drink this as a beverage are having fun, but we want them to have more fun, and try it with your favorite dishes. The entree that we recommend is a beautiful preparation of lobster with Thai-inspired sweet corn with a little bit of unsweetened coconut, not sweetened, but unsweetened coconut with a mango salsa. That's quite delightful. And as you remember, Michael, on Valentine's Day, I brought you a beautiful trifle because I want to let everyone know how much I like them. And we love each other on Valentine's Day. Yeah. So that was a white raspberry, a white chocolate and raspberry trifle that wasn't overly sweet. The acidity in the raspberries brings out the brightness of the wine, and it just makes you want to have more trifle and more Moscato, and that's a beautiful thing.
Now, while we have you here, can you talk a little bit about the experiences that you offer at St. Supéry, visiting the winery, and what folks can expect and what they can experience if they do come here to Napa Valley?
Well, we have great wine. That's the first thing, and so that's why we're here, that's why we're with Michael. But we also are in competition, not just for the wine, but for the experience. And so we've created some new experiences to get people a little more involved, to discover what their own preferences are, and to reveal more about themselves. So we have pairings where the wine is going to change with food. So we have a wine and cheese pairing. We have the 5 Bordeaux varietal pairing where we teach you about how to taste these varietals and how to use the 5 senses and treats with that. And then we have something called aromatherapy with a corkscrew, where you learn quite a bit more about learning to smell and how that brings more pleasure to the glass. And so certainly St. Supéry, we are here to please you and change you a little bit. We want to transform you to be a better taster, because so many people that are visiting Napa Valley are doing so because they've come to the source. They want to learn more about winemaking. They want to see the vines. They want to learn more about why we're so passionate about what we're doing at St. Supéry. And so hopefully we've answered the bell with our programs. And we look forward to people making a reservation.
And I see we have another question. Does Moscato work with foie gras?
Not really. There's a tendency for foie gras to have something that would be very rich, like a Sauterne, the classic botrytis wine.
And it's fabulous with Sauterne.
Yeah. This is not a botrytis wine. And indeed, you don't want it the way you would have it like chocolate. Have port with chocolate. This is not a chocolate wine. But it's so refreshing and so delightful with what's in the market. I mean, this country is changing so much in terms of farm to table and local produce and or organic fruit and things that we can get locally. And of course, you have the apple butter from Dollar Hyde. That's a great example. Yes. We've got a little apricot jam that we serve to when you do the wine and cheese pairing with Moscato. And it changes the wine so much. It adds texture to the wine, and it just lingers, and suddenly you realize it's a sophisticated wine. It's not a Riesling. You're not going to set it aside to age 5 years. It's meant to be a joy in the glass today.
Excellent.
And Sarah Guterbach, I did my best with that, wants to know the decision to bottle Moscato without gas.
You know what? We aren't trying to exactly be an Italian Moscato per se, and we have sort of created our wine for the style that we think is really excellent. And we've been doing it here at St. Supéry before my day. I mean, I think the first wine was produced in like 1989 or something, in the early days of St. Supéry. And really what we're trying to do is bring flavour to the fore. We actually allow the alcohol to be a little higher than the Muscat, the Asties. And so here we're at about 10.5% of alcohol, maybe even 11 some years. And we also, we want the wine to be full of flavour, and we want to rest the laurels of this wine on that. We're not trying to make it bright and fizzy and what have you. The wine is what it is, and that's the choice we've made for the style. So, yeah.
I'm just curious, going back 10 or 15 years, what was Moscato's place in the marketplace?
Very interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think, well, I don't know, actually. I mean, we would have had some of those, there would have been the Italian Moscatos in the marketplace, a few people making California Moscatos, but there wasn't an enormous amount of them like we see today.
Yeah.
Today, there's such a turn towards Moscato that there's a boatload on the shelf now. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the case 5 or 6 years ago. It's just changed.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, remarkable. Yeah.
Pretty amazing, and what a great example to try. And you mentioned the alcohol. It's amazing how integrated the alcohol is into this. And I remember I had asked you last time what it was, because it is so balanced and so to drink. It's perfect pétanque coiffer to
it is.
enjoy.
Absolutely,
on a beautiful summer day.
Yeah, and you know, Scott talked about food. You know, one of the things I like to serve this with is, if you're not drinking it on its own, which is fine too, I like to have it with just sort of a light sorbet or some fresh fruit. You know, it's fantastic. That and a little cream and what have you.
Well, Easter's coming up. You could have it with ham with a little bit of a marmalade glaze. I think that would be delightful.
Excellent.
Definitely, and I do believe we have our final question of the day from the Barrel Thief. Can you talk about Sauvignon? I don't know what that term is. Muscat.
Yeah, basically what the question's about from the Barrel Thief is Sauvignon Muscat. When we talk about grapevines and planting stock, we talk about clones, and don't get too confused. It's not clone like in crazy Star Wars stuff. It's just different plant selections. It happens to be termed clone. But Sauvignon Muscat is a clone of Sauvignon Blanc, so it will give you a slight flavour profile that's unique to that clone of Sauvignon Blanc. However, there's a very old-fashioned clone in California, Clone 1, been around forever. In fact, most Sauvignon Blancs are that vineyard, that selection. And more recently, there's been some fashionable clones out of France that are being used and still tried and worked on now, which are pretty interesting. We have some of them. But we don't grow a lot of Muscat. We do have one vineyard with some Muscat, but it's not the direction we're taking our wine, because our wine is grown from our own selection. It's not non-Muscat, and our selection encourages the grapefruit, the green lime, the citrus zest in the wine, and that's what our wine is. That's where we want it to be, and we're going to continue to do that. Muscat brings what some people will suggest is a muscat quality. So we're not actually trying to bring a muscat quality into our Sauvignon Blanc. It also has a different texture. Muscat will have a slight feel through the palate, and we are not encouraging that in our wine, because we want our Sauvignon Blanc to have full volume of flavour, but to be very gentle at the same time. We don't want to bring a lot of phenol or texture more than what we've got with the flavour. So that's our decision. It's a good clone, but it's not what we use.
Wow, thank you for asking that question. That was very fascinating. That is our time for today, gentlemen. That went quick.
Fantastic.
What happened?
Yeah, I don't know. It was great.
It was so great to have the opportunity to create the sequel here and come back and converse with both of you again. Scott, Michael.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks, gentlemen and scholars.
That's very, very good. I appreciate it.
I guess we should offer a cheers.
Cheers. Absolutely.
Well
Check
wishes.
it out.
Thank you to everybody
for
joining us. And find the wines on grappos.com. Connect with St. Supéry on social media. Again, at St. Supéry, hashtag St. Supéry. They are very good at connecting with people online. So keep the conversation going and have the most amazing Saturday of your entire life. Cheers.
Cheers.